What if I told you that noise, something that's always there, something we're always hearing, is actually a very powerful tool in music? I assure you that if you master noise, it will not only exceed your possibilities of audio design, but it will also give you an ability to craft original high quality samples that you can use in your productions. So in this video, I'm going to show you just how impressive sounds you can create from noise. I'm going to show you how to get your hands on different kinds of noises, and I'm going to give you an in-depth detailed guide on how to make hi-hats, snares, kicks, risers, percussion, and many more sound effects, just using noise. But first, we need to understand what noise is, and when I'm referring to noise, I'm talking about the sound that is hitting all the frequencies throughout the spectrum. It's a constant sound that our ears are always exposed to. Noise comes in different forms, white, gray, pink, and brown being the most common. And now the differences between these different colors of noises is that they simply amplify some different zones of the frequency spectrum. But that is not as important in this case, because we'll do that manually anyway, throughout the video. The important thing I want you to understand is this flatness of noise, the fact that it's hitting all the frequencies, and that is the thing that makes noise so useful. You see, all sounds, samples, and instruments have a certain frequency response. But noise contains all frequencies in the spectrum. That means if you can just isolate the wanted frequencies, you can totally make your own unique sound. Now, there are limits to this. I'm not saying that just by using an EQ you can artificially make a human-like voice saying anything you want. I am saying that using an EQ you can point out or expose areas of the response to create a clear and more workable sample. But before we can work with noise, we'll need to get our hands on it. Now the easiest way to get your hands on noise is literally just to audio record a quiet room. And you don't even need some expensive microphone to do this. You can just use your phone, because noise isn't a particular sound like a snap. It's just noise and it's everywhere. So take your phone and audio record a quiet room. And by the way, in this video I will only be using noise that I've recorded with my phone. But what if you can't find a quiet room, or you just want that pure noise? Then my biggest tip is to find a synth, put the oscillators down, the noise up, sample this, and you got yourself some noise. Now the last option is of course to go to a website and download the sounds, all that, and just hope to not get a virus. Alright, next step is pre-treating, and this is only relevant if you recorded your noise manually. If you didn't, you can go ahead and skip this section. Now when you audio record a quiet room and turn the gain up, there will always be these dips and peaks in the dynamic range and in the frequency spectrum. This can be very annoying to work with, but do not worry. Just with some EQ and compression, we can get these out of the way. First, I like to compress the sound, but this compressor will only take the highest peaks. Therefore, it needs a fast attack and a fast release. And now, I would like to EQ the sound. Here, look for these dips and peaks throughout the frequency spectrum and neutralize them to get that flat response. And if you run into these sudden peaks, I would manually automate the EQ bands to neutralize it. At last, I will compress the sound again, but this time it's just to gently squeeze the dynamics, so it needs medium attack and release. Here's a comparison. Now, we understand what noise is and we've gathered ourselves the sound. And now, we come to the fun part. Now, like any other music tip, my biggest one is just to experiment. Let your creative mind guide you, and that is not only the most fun, but also one of the best learning methods I can recommend. But now, I'm going to tell you the top 8 best uses of noise, and it's ranked in coolness. Alright, at number 8 we have background noise. Especially if you're making lo-fi or chill beats, noise in the background is more than capable of bettering the vibe. So go ahead, drag the noise in and fill with the volume to make it mix well with the music. Alright, at number 7 we have the riser. Jumping straight from chill to energetic music, you will often find risers. The thing about it is that noise is actually one of the most common ways to make a riser. Now a riser is a sound that gradually gets louder over time. Some risers are short and some are long. Now the technique to make noise rise is pretty simple. It's a filter and an amplitude envelope, but here's the simple guide. Drag the noise to a track and add a high resonant high pass filter. Then make this slope automation and fade it in, and bam! you got yourself a riser. If you want to spice things up, you can create 2 tracks which each has their own type of filter. I like to have a mauve bandpass filter in my secondary track, but you can decide for yourself. Add some effects to make it more interesting, like filter envelopes, or tremolo, or both. This leads me straight to number 6, which typically comes right after a riser, the hit. A hit is literally just a reverse riser, but the thing that's a bit more tricky is to make it punch. Therefore, I recommend this automation for a hit to really punch through. If it still isn't as powerful as wanted, you can try adding saturation with the same automation. Fiddle with the color and output to get the sound you want. Here's a comparison. Number 5 is the hi-hat. Jumping into some drum sounds, our first one is the hi-hat. First, you want to take a part of your noise and make this fade out. Be aware that you can experiment with fade outs and lengths to get a hi-hat that's like closed or open. You can also reverse them. Then you want to EQ it. Here, cut out at least everything below 500 Hz, and now you want to be careful. Because noise fills out the spectrum, it can sound very lame and muddy if you don't make dips in certain frequencies. To treat this, it will probably require an advanced EQ, with at least 4 bands and a resonating option for each band. The good news is that this filling into spectrum opens up so many possibilities to tune your hi-hat. To enable these possibilities, I recommend you have at least 3 bands that are quite resonant to make these dips. And the way you tune your hi-hat, just shuffle around with these dips. I recommend having an area in the spectrum that's untouched. This will be the main frequencies of the hi-hat. I recommend some reverb to top it off, and yeah, that's it for the hi-hat. Number 4 is the snare. The snare really leans up to the hi-hat in terms of length and fade. Maybe you want the fade out to be a bit longer, but that's up to you. Also, you don't want bass in the snare, so be sure to cut that out. Now, unlike the hi-hat, the snare can easily have that boxy 500 Hz to give it that power. Now again, the real characteristics of the snare comes with these dips you make in the frequency spectrum. I will show some examples. Also, try to understand what every individual dip does to the sound. Like here, and now I change the dip, you can hear the difference. It's really up to you and what you want it to perform. One tip to make snare punch through is this saturation envelope to give that crisp feeling. Now how you saturate it, it really depends on how you EQ it. That's why that when you make your snare, you should always have in mind what you want to promote with it. If you want it bright, then make EQ and saturation bright and crisp. But if you want it boxy, make sure to promote the necessary frequencies with EQ and color your saturation to shape the sound like that. Number 3, the kick. This will about have the same length and fade as the snare. Low pass everything over 700 Hz, and I recommend turning down the 200 Hz area, because this will prevent the kick from sounding muddy. The thing about a kick is that punch through, and that's why for the kick I recommend you saturate it. I prefer having 2 saturators. One is mellow with the color and is 100% wet, while the other is a bit more crisp, having a brighter color but not so wet. The most important thing is making an envelope for the drive, like this. Now I also like to EQ a lot of my kicks, and as before, this is to give that tone I like. I will both have an EQ before and after the saturation, and the important thing in mind is to not make it sound muddy or boomy, and that's the hard part about working with noise. Most of our EQ is to eliminate unwanted frequencies. Number 2 is the click percussion thing. It's pretty cool. We start by finding a sampler and drag the noise in. To make the click sound, you need a very fast release, like about 30 milliseconds. Now add reverb with 1 second decay and about 25% wetness, and yeah, that's a click. You can experiment with envelope, pitch, and EQ to get your sound, and a good tip is to add delay. I like to have the left and right channel kinda staggered like this, and the feedback to be high frequencies only with medium feedback and kinda low wetness. At number 1 place, the coolest sound to make with noise is the laser sound. This is the coolest sound on the list, and it's not really hard to make, like at all. The only thing you need is just a resonating movement. So first drag the sound in and fade it steeply in and gradually out. Then add a bandpass filter and then make this steep envelope in this little fade in section. At the climax, it should be at the highest frequencies before descending through the spectrum as the sounds phase out. Now to spice things up, you can always make extra arrangement with morph and resonance to make subtle changes, but this really comes up to what you want to do with your sound. Also, this can be reversed. And be sure to experiment with fades, envelopes, and other values. In this video, we only really covered samples, but did you know you can make instruments out of noise? If you want to see that, make sure to let me know in the comments and like this video if you want. Other than that, I don't want to waste your time anymore, so goodbye.